F.E.A.R, or First Encounter Assault Recon, made by Monolith Productions in 2005. It's an FPS where you're shooting clone soldiers, and every so often a long-haired girl keeps killing everyone nearby and haunting you. Last time I played this game was last year, 2021, after not having played it for, I think, 8 years? 7 years? The American remake of The Ring came out in 2002, 3 years prior to this, both on October 18th too, and there is no fucking way that that movie has nothing to do with the creation of some of this game's concept as the writer claims. The First Encounter Assault Recon is supposed to be like a team that deals with paranormal shit, kinda like the X-Files, except they're special forces. You don't really get to see what other stuff they deal with aside from the ones in this game. You, a guy with no name except for Point Man, have only been with the F.E.A.R team for a short while, and already you're sent to the only assignment you'll ever have, which is to locate some psychic cannibal telepathically controlling clone soldiers, and said soldiers will be like 80% of the enemies you fight, which isn't really a bad thing here.
This is why nobody takes us seriously. Military clones.
A full battalion of them, highly trained and heavily armed.
Despite being in a team, you're actually going solo for the entire game. The story even kind of makes an excuse for it too, saying that the point man is already too good to be sent out with a teammate.
You can't send him in alone, that's crazy.
He can take care of himself. Now move!
The first thing you probably notice when looking this game up is the long-haired girl. Her name is Alma, as you learn really early on in the game.
Alma.
And of course, she's the star of every F.E.A.R game.
Origin.
What the hell are you talking about?
You learn bits of interesting lore here and there, all from laptops and voicemails. Some voicemails are incredibly pointless, which I'm gonna assume are just for the sake of world building. You learn through the lore, and some hints here and there, about Alma's relevance in all this, and how fucked up her backstory is.
These men are from F.E.A.R.
If you've got subtitles turned on, the first thing you'll notice is that they're too tiny, as well as the rest of the UI. The game was originally designed for the small 4x3 monitors, but I think the text is too small even for those. You need to mod the game for bigger text. Aside from being the tutorial map for getting used to the basic controls, the first area where you get to control your character is pretty much just the devs showing off their fancy 2005 effects. It's also them introducing you to the horror part of the game. The horror throughout the entire game can be pretty cool, with its great lighting mixed with randomish scares, usually occurring when the UI is bugging out or the Screech Thing horror movies use starts. You almost never know when a haunting or hallucination is going to take place. Some of the prop placements can be extremely clever too, I'd like to think. This silhouette in the dark, for example, I'm almost positive has freaked out anyone who's actually noticed it, until they see that it's just a cactus. Some problems with the way the game tries to scare you though is that it's also very easy to miss some moments. You might sometimes end up hearing the cue that there's a scare happening, but then you keep looking around, wondering what's supposed to happen, and you either missed it or just didn't notice it since the scare was probably just props being tossed off of shelves or something. Some people might have a problem with the horror conflicting too much with the action. Like, it might be too hard to appreciate the horror in a game where there's a lot of shooting and style going on. It might also be a little hard to replay these games for some people because there are a lot of stretches of nothing happening, and unskippable events that's meant for people playing for the first time. Figuring out where to go next in this game can be real bothersome sometimes. The objective thing tells you your mission objective, but you have to figure out for yourself where to run to, and it's not usually obvious. Oftentimes, you don't even know why you're interacting with the shit you're interacting with until you see for yourself what in the map changed afterwards. The FPS part is perhaps some of the best that's come out of any FPS game. Firing the guns themselves don't actually feel very good. There's a large input buffer between shots, so it's extremely easy to accidentally shoot off an extra round. Any of the guns with burst fire don't actually feel like you're firing off 3 shots in quick succession. It feels more like firing a gun once shoots out 3 bullets. It's weird. All that said, getting results with the guns is extremely satisfying. Guns and ammo are everywhere, so you'll never run out of ammo except maybe for some really specific weapons. The legally distinct USP pistol is overall one of the best weapons in the game for its firepower and control, despite giving off a weak appearance with it being your starting weapon. Plus you can go akimbo with them for full style without accuracy loss. Ammo is somewhat limited for him as balance, I guess. Any of the burst fire automatic guns are pretty strong too and are extremely abundant, but they just feel weird to shoot. The legally distinct Spaz 12 shotgun is, like in almost any other shooter with a shotgun, extremely strong at close range. And it can gib and literally tear apart enemies. What determines the gore stuff has always felt random to me. The nail gun is just a basic semi-automatic rifle, until you kill an enemy near a wall, which then becomes a lot more worthwhile to use just for being able to pin them.
You alright?
If you're lucky, you'll get some funny poses. The laser sniper thing can vaporize basic enemies instantly on a good hit. The rocket launcher in the game, for some reason, fires 3 rockets in succession, and ammo for them is as rare as the most optimal times to use them. The repeating cannon fires off 20mm somethings that make mini explosions, which can hurt you if you're too close. For slightly more strategic approaches, you've also got regular grenades, sticky grenades that have to be triggered manually, and proximity mines. You've got a few fancy melee attacks in this game that instantly kill basic enemies. Opportunities to use them safely don't come very often, since you're typically better off shooting and spraying even at close range. But pulling them off is almost always extremely satisfying with how cool you can look doing them. My only real problem with these is that the sliding attack isn't actually very good, as a slide. But I guess if the slide went any further and faster, it'd be too strong of a melee attack. The most unique gameplay feature is perhaps the slow-mo, that the game itself even calls it. If you can remember that it exists while you're shooting, you're probably going to abuse it to the point that it becomes a reflex to activate it as much as you can. The thing is easy to abuse in that while it needs to charge after use, you can just camp in a safe spot until you're ready to slow-mo again. By that point, if you're not already on the highest difficulty setting, you should be, as slow-mo abuse makes the game significantly easier, at least if you're using it in conjunction with high patience and constant cover taking. During slow-mo, you can pull off some obvious things like making headshots easier. Less obvious, though, are things like peeking corners more safely, or even shooting grenades thrown by either the enemy or yourself. You feel very cool when you pull it off. It's easy to mess up the fancy melee attacks during slow-mo though, due to the difference in timing for the command inputs outside of slow-mo. The enemy AI in this game is known to be great. I don't really know the technicals or whatever behind it, but I know that they'll shout out the things you do and react to them accordingly to the best of their abilities. Like your flashlight being on, attempted flanks, and so on, as well as trying to flank you and flush you out with grenades themselves if they know you've been taking cover behind a specific location for too long. All that said, it's not perfect either. I've had some moments where they yelled sniper while I was firing my shotgun. Plus, if you abuse the slow-mo mechanic, it's a lot more difficult to notice exactly what they try to do anyway. Much of the shit they shout out are supposed to be hints about the current situation, but it's kind of weird that they yell out all these things very clearly for you to hear. The game's also got 2 expansions, one good one and one not as good. They're both non-canon now thanks to the sequels, but you can always pretend those games don't exist. The good expansion, Extraction Point, takes place after the base game. It goes a lot harder on the horror, is more difficult, and many consider it to just be outright better than the base game itself. The not as good one, Perseus Mandate, I see little talk of compared to regular F.E.A.R and Extraction Point. I played that one once, almost a decade ago, and I don't remember a shit about it. And if it was that bad in comparison, I don't really care enough to try to remember. F.E.A.R is a good fucking game. It takes like 7-10 hours to beat normally. It's got a bit of an interesting story, good action, and some decent horror.
car pileup on Maricopa Route 5 when a completely chromed motorcycle entered traffic, apparently blinding several motorists. This is Radio Free Cronus broadcasting everywhere all the time to everyone. Be good, be safe, be happy. This is Radio Free Cronus.